Okay, next I want to cover some elements of culture in this realm. And we started off looking at three questions. Is this a dry world, an Arab world, or the Islamic world? We've covered the dry world by looking at the physical geography and the climate. And I want to explore the other two, which have to do with culture and religion. Okay, so question number one, is this the Arab world? That's sort of the one kind of, if you did a word cloud describing this realm, that some of the words you would look at would be religion, like Islam, or culture, like Arabs. And the thing I want to point out is the culture is complicated, but one element we can use as a lens to look at culture is language. And this is a language map of most of the realm. The areas in yellow are with number 5s are, for the most part, places where Arabic languages are spoken. These are different language families. This is Afro-Asiatic family, which includes Arabic. One exception here is Hebrew, which is spoken in Israel. And then these are what are called Berber languages that are indigenous to North Africa, but they're usually in places that are a bit more remote and not so densely populated. But so for the most part here, you have Arabic languages. Now, you have something different happening in the green and the blues here. You have two completely different language families. You have Turkic in Turkey, which makes sense, also in places like Turkmenistan. And you also have Iranian languages, or what's often referred to as Persian in Iran. And these are in the Indo-European family, which is completely different than Arabic. And along those same lines, the people who speak these different languages generally do not self-identify as Arabs. They identify as different cultures than Arab cultures. So just to recap, you have the Arabic language is dominant in North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. You have the Turkic language, which is dominant in the area of Turkey and a few other places. And then you have Iranian or Persian languages in the region near Iran. So here's another view with some labels on it. You have Arabic, which is a dominant language group throughout most of the realm. But up here in this corner where you have Iran and Turkey and their neighbors, you have other different cultural groups that do not self-identify as Arab. I want to highlight this area that's number 16. We're going to be looking at that in a future lecture. And these are where people speak Kurdish. And this is an area generally called Kurdistan, where people have a different culture than their neighbor. They don't self-identify as Arabs. They speak a different language than some of their countries that they live in, such as Iraq and Syria, as parts of the news, Turkey, and parts of Iran. If we zoom out and take a wider view of these over a larger area, the Arabic language is part of what are called Afro-Asiatic languages, languages that extend from Asia into Africa. The Turkic languages extend into Central Asia, the Stan countries that we've looked at in the past, and all the way into Siberia, essentially across the grassland zones, across all the way into Russia and parts of China. This incursion of Indo-European here, this is actually Russian. So Indo-European languages, they've actually split over time. They originated somewhere maybe around Turkey, and people who spoke a common language migrated into Europe and also into the area of Iran and all the way into India. And so the languages that are spoken in many parts of India and Iran are actually closer relatives to European languages like English than they are to other languages like Arabic. And the next thing I want to look at is the Islamic world. And before this, I encourage you to look at the clip that talks about Shia versus Sunni Islam. And also, I think I have a clip about the different Abrahamic or monotheistic faiths in the realm. So I encourage you to look at that first. This gives you a lot better background. But in short, this part of the world is home to the 3 large monotheistic religions, which means single God religions. And the oldest among them is Judaism. And this is a religion that originated in the area kind of near Israel. And you also have Christianity, which should be somewhat familiar. And Christianity carried with it traditions of Judaism because it emerged in the same area where Judaism was a common religion. And likewise, Islam, which originated in the Arabian Peninsula, also carries with it traditions out of Judaism and Christianity. They're not completely unrelated religions. They do share some common figures and some common, there is some commonality between these. They're not completely separate from each other. Now, within Islam itself, there is a major division of Islam between Sunni and Shia. One of the clips that we'll watch explains this was an early split within the church around in the 600s, where you have a power struggle between people who wanted to elect after the Prophet Muhammad died. You had a struggle between those who wanted to elect a new leader from the church. Those are in the Sunni tradition, and ones who wanted one of the relatives of Muhammad to take over leadership, but those are the Shia. The thing I want to point out, if you look at this figure, and we'll take a closer look in a moment, there is a geographic they're not evenly distributed, that some countries are more Sunni, some countries are more Shia, and then some countries have a minority of one or the other. Now, the other thing I want to highlight is that Sunni is the dominant of the two. Like 80 to 90%, let's say, of Muslims in the world, not just here, are Sunnis, and the minority, mostly concentrated here, Shia, are maybe about 10 to 15%. So two of the places where the Shia branch of the faith is dominant are in Iran and southeastern Iraq. In Iran, they are the large majority. So Iran is a very Shiite country, in other words. Now in Iraq, they are a slight majority. And it doesn't look like much, but this blue area here is in the area of Mesopotamia, and this is the more populated part of Iraq. So a slight majority of Iraqis are Shia versus Sunni. But it's pretty even compared to other places. You also have other splits, like in Yemen, you have both Sunni and Shia. In Syria, you have both Shia along the coast and Sunnis in the interior. And so you do have some mixtures in other places. But the major core of the Shiite religion is Iran, and then it spills over into neighboring southeastern Iraq. This is a figure. These are both from an older textbook, kind of showing kind of what's happening in the rest of Africa as you move further south. Through the Sahara, you do have Islam, but then there is a transition, and then it changes into Christianity and indigenous religions becoming dominant in the south of Africa. We'll cover more of that later. Now, when we ask the question, is this the Islamic world? One thing that complicates this is that while the percentages of people who practice Islam are very high, at the same time, the populations of these countries are relatively low compared to some others in the world, like Indonesia or India. So while the percentage of Muslims in India is relatively low, about 15%, because India is such a large country, that 15% represents a lot of people. A chart is a better way to look at this. So if you kind of click on this link here, Islam by country, I put it into a slide to make it a little easier for us to look at here. If you look at the countries with the largest Muslim population, and one thing I should probably clarify here, when we talk about, say, Christianity, the religion is Christianity, and the people who adhere to it, who practice it, are called Christians. The names are very similar. In Islam, Islam is the name of the religion, and Muslims are the people who practice it. The names are a bit different and relatively different, but we're talking about the same thing. So the percent of people who practice Islam or who are Muslim, they're relatively high in places like Egypt and Iran and Turkey. They're in the high 90s. However, the total number of people, if we sort it by the total number of people, the country with the most Muslims is Indonesia, and that's far away in Southeast Asia. Next is Pakistan, which is in South Asia. India, which is in South Asia. These are outside of the realm that we're covering right now. These are outside of that Middle East area. Bangladesh, Nigeria, which is in sub-Saharan Africa. And these countries altogether account for about half of the world's Muslim population. So And in other words, while Islam is an important religion in this realm, there are more people who practice religion outside of the realm than inside of the realm. And a lot of that has to do with just lower populations altogether. So this is a better kind of wider view of the Muslim world. It extends into Central Asia that we've covered before, the Stan countries. It extends even into Russia, especially in the Transcaucasia region. It extends into fairly deep into Africa, and then into India and even into Indonesia. So it's fairly widely distributed, but how did it get there? That's another thing we can look at, and even in parts of Europe as well, in the Balkans. And this is a figure from our book showing the diffusion of Islam. We're going to talk about what that means. It means how things spread. And we can see that things start here in Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula. That's where the religion originated, and then slowly kind of radiated outward all the way into Europe eventually, parts of Spain. But then you have these other links where it's transported over the ocean deep into East Africa, into the Ganges Delta here. This is where Bangladesh is today, and then all the way over to Indonesia. And these are different forms of what are called spatial diffusion. This is about the transfer of people, ideas, and things, how culture moves from place to place. There's different types of diffusion. That expansion is about radiating outward from a core area, like the movement from Mecca to its neighbors. Then there's also relocation diffusion, which is moving of a religion or whatever it is we're talking about through a distant location. So traders who traveled far away into the area that's now Indonesia brought the religion with them and relocated the religion there. Maybe another example might be relocation of Catholicism from Portugal to Brazil. That would be another example. But the thing I want to note about Islam here is that it relocated through both, through expansion and also relocation.